Hello, and welcome back. You are watching the Zenith Glow Astrology channel. My name is Christina, and I'm an astrologer, and we are here gathered today to talk all about the fire horse. Ooh, the fire horse energy. We are going to do a deep dive into this subject today, one of my favorite things to do. I have been nerding out for days. Just researching themes about horses and comparing them to astrological alignments in 2026 and how this all comes together. And I've got my theories and I've got my perceptions, and I'm going to share all of those things with you all. So, thank you for being here. Welcome. If you wouldn't mind, please, would you like this video? Subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell if you haven't already, and by all means, please share this video far and wide if you think it will resonate with people. Doing all of this supports my work, and I really appreciate your support. Thank you so much, folks. I love you all, and I am so excited to have you here. So, let's talk about the fire horse. So, in case you're wondering and you're not sure what the deal with the fire horse is, we will have a new lunar year. Let me say that again. We will have Lunar New Year on February 17th, 2026. When we have Lunar New Year, this is when we enter a new thematic animal and element in Chinese astrology. And that animal and that element holds specific themes and codes, and we are influenced by that energy for the duration of that Chinese year, which will go until the next Lunar New Year, which will actually be February 6th, 2027. So from February 17th, 2026 to February 6th, 2027, that's a little confusing to say, isn't it? We're going to be in this energy of the fire horse. So, very powerful energy. A lot of us are super psyched to get out of the wood snake energy, although I give it so much love because it has given me so much transformation. Speaking of, I wrote an article recently for my Substack, kind of going into what the wood snake has blessed us with, and just kind of wrapping up those themes and talking about where we are right now as we're kind of in a liminal space at the moment, because we are not yet in the fire horse energy, but we are starting to segue out of the wood snake energy. Hence, we are feeling the blending of those energies. So if you're interested in learning more about that, I will post a link to that article that I wrote below, and I do get a little personal in it. So if you want some juicy details about my life, no, I'm just kidding. It's not that detailed, but I do get personal. It'll be there for you to check out. So, we have this Lunar New Year corresponding with an annular solar eclipse, and it's the first eclipse that we are going to have along the axis of Aquarius and Leo. Okay, so for the next 18 months or so, we're going to be experiencing eclipses in the sign of either Aquarius or Leo, and this first eclipse is going to be in Aquarius. So, new, fresh energy coming in, and then having that Lunar New Year correspond with an eclipse is extra potent energy. The eclipse that we are having happens to be an annular solar eclipse, which is also known as a ring of fire eclipse. Okay, so fire horse, ring of fire. We've also got other fire things going on astrologically this year. So, fire is a really big theme. In astrology, fire is the element that potentially could be the most associated with spirit or spirituality. And yes, we can also go into those themes with the element of water, and water actually does hold some significance this year as well. We're kind of still in that energy of bridging between water and fire, which is something we did this last year in 2025. That's sort of carrying forward into 2026, but we are definitely stepping more assertively into the fire energy this year. Where 2025 had more of like an internal process going on, where things were very much taken inwardly. And there was a lot of shedding, and there was a lot of looking to the past, and there was just a lot of deep transformation happening more on those inward levels. We now kind of get the mirroring effect in 2026, where that work begins to manifest outside of ourselves and we are compelled more into action. So expect a lot of change this year, but this time the change will be happening more externally. Not to say that you won't be going through internal changes, of course, we always are, but again, that's where the focus is. It's going to be more action oriented external changes. So, let's see. I'm already feeling the fire energy. This happened when I did my 2026 video, which if you want to learn more about what the astrological alignments are for 2026 in a month by month format, I have that video. I'll link that at the end of this video if you want to check that out. But then when I did that video, I was feeling the fire horse energy and I was really excited and I couldn't my brain and my mouth couldn't synchronize. And yeah, I can already feel that coming in now. In fact, I kind of feel some heat. I kind of feel some heat running through my chest and my abdomen. So interesting. Okay. So just bear with me, y'all. Just bear with me. So let's talk about horses. Let's talk about horses. We have a lot of things that are going into this horse theme. So, some of the more obvious things that you may have heard other people talking about, horses are associated with freedom, movement, change, adaptability, um, and speed. Of course, that makes sense. And there's also themes, especially because we are talking about the fire element. Now, mind you, in Chinese astrology, horses are already naturally attuned to the fire element. So it's sort of like the horse is in its home element this year. So we get like a more prominent tone coming through the energy, if that makes sense. It's like fire on fire, extra fire, 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 fire. So we are definitely going to be feeling the fire element. Once again, that tends to be more of a spiritual kind of energy. And yes, that's right. See, I'm already darting all over the place. The Ring of Fire eclipse, Ring of Fire, it has this implication of spiritual initiation. So, yeah, it's about the unconscious being made conscious and us being triggered into a new beginning. And because this Lunar New Year is an event, like any kind of event in astrology, something that is birthed or begun in life, whether you're starting a business or getting married or literally giving birth, that thing, like a birth, gets stamped with the energies that are current at that time, right? This is the same thing as a birth chart. It's like everything can have a birth chart in astrology. It doesn't just apply to people. So the themes for the Lunar New Year of the fire horse are stamped with this ring of fire eclipse energy in Aquarius. Okay, so the themes of Aquarius are extra prominent this year, and that ring of fire energy is extra prominent, and it's going to go through the whole year. It's like this is the tone, this is the octave we're working with, right? So we have this energy of spiritual initiation. We have this energy of bringing the unconscious into consciousness. And mind you, we've been working a lot with the unconscious all through 2025, partly because Jupiter was working through Cancer. Now it is still in Cancer until the end of June, but it's going to be changing signs, and we'll talk about that. But these themes are coming up to the fore. It's like all the rooting around that Jupiter has been doing in Cancer through the deepest parts of ourselves, our psyches, our souls. We are now bringing those things up into conscious awareness. And once those things come up into consciousness, we are able to now take that enlightenment, that insight, and propel it forward into some kind of change or action. Hence, we are initiated on a spiritual level to make changes. So, all of us are getting prepared essentially to launch ourselves into our spiritual destiny, whatever that may be. It's going to be different for each and every one of us, but each of us has signed up for some kind of a mission. And we've been doing a lot of prep work to get ready. And now is the moment this year when it's like, gentlemen, start your engines. Like, we're going to go. The race is on. We are going to move forward and start taking action on this now. And we are also in a one universal year energy numerologically. So there's a lot of emphasis on the self this year. This is also coming through the alignments of Neptune and Saturn as they officially ingress into the sign of Aries. Now, Neptune's doing that at the end of this month, January, and then Saturn will make its ingress on February 14th, happy Valentine's Day, which is actually going to be 3 days before that eclipse. So that energy is also getting funneled into this like imprint for the year, the energetic imprint of the fire horse. So absolutely, there's this strong tone of spiritual initiation and activation of the individual mission. And there's a lot of work that goes into that, though, of course, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But yeah, so these are some of the more prominent themes, right? Freedom, independence, change, movement, speed, acceleration. These are all horsey themes that I think we are definitely going to be experiencing this year, and these are things that a lot of people are talking about. So absolutely. So starting with that, I made some notes. I have so many notes, you guys. And I do this thing when I take notes. I write out like these long paragraphs because I'm like, yeah, and I'm just writing. And then I sit down to do these videos and I'm like, okay, I can't just sit here and read paragraph after paragraph to y'all. I have to like actually talk to you and have a conversation about this. So I made some notes and hopefully I'll remember all the important points. I have to trust that what comes out is what needs to be said. So, starting with those key themes that are the more obvious themes, right? Horses are associated with freedom, horses are associated with movement, change, initiation, right? So, again, we have Saturn and Neptune moving into Aries. This is really the start of a new cycle because we're talking about a cardinal sign. The world is literally moving into a new cycle, but it's also the first cardinal sign. So it's a brand new, fresh, baby fresh new cycle that we are moving into. Now, Aries has this energy of special destiny, special purpose. And it is the mission of Aries as an archetype to defend its right to follow its own path where it feels called. It's literally like the hero's journey, and it's the call to action that we receive. That is like the Aryan archetype. So the Aries, not Aryan, but you know what I mean. Yes, Aoife. Aoife just groaned so loud. She's like, oh my God. I swear she's getting older. She is getting older, but I mean like old lady older. But she's not even 4 years old yet. Okay. So we have a soul purpose, right? And this is what's coming through the Saturn and Neptune transit through Aries. Now, Neptune's going to be there for quite a while, 12 or 13 years. Saturn's only going to be working through this sign for the next 3 years. Saturn is disciplining us when it comes to Aries, right? It's going to give us tests. It's going to give us challenges. It's going to present us with limitations and barriers, okay? And it's our job to buckle down, to get serious, and to apply the principles of Saturn, which is determination and hard work and commitment, in order to move through those challenges and tests successfully. Neptune, on the other hand, is shifting us into a higher octave, into the highest octave of the expression of Aries. So, in its lower expression, Aries can be very impulsive and hot-headed, and it's seeking to start fights and just wanting conflict for the sake of conflict. It can be really, really combative. It can be really immature and naive because, it's the first sign of the zodiac. It can be associated with that kind of immaturity and lack of experience. And Saturn, meanwhile, is like our most mature, disciplined planet. So it's really bringing us into this energy of needing to discipline the self. Okay. Neptune is presenting us with a new spiritual calling, right? We are receiving that call to adventure. And this is happening individually for each of us. We have a unique path that we need to follow. We are compelled to follow that path, to answer the call, right? There's a call to adventure. But there is a difference between what the ego desires, and Aries is associated with ego, versus what the soul desires. Okay. So we're definitely experiencing the juxtaposition of those two dual, potentially conflicting desires, right? And that is the lesson of Neptune. Neptune seeks to dissolve things. And in the case of being in Aries, it will be dissolving our ego as it transits through this sign, which is not easy. It's not easy energy, folks. So just so you know, spiritual initiation for a reason, right? Um, and that's where Saturn can actually really help us out if we work with those energies as we discipline ourselves to really listen. What is the call? And does this differ from what I desire at an ego level? Is there something deeper that I'm supposed to be doing? A lot of the time, again, like Aries will want to just fight or resist for the sake of it rather than actually doing what is necessary. And so it really is this energy of getting us into alignment with our spiritual selves, with our soul, with our higher calling. And then we can use that fiery energy to apply in the right direction. That's really what this is going to be about. And that's going to be one of the challenges this year is taming the ego. There's that horse energy coming through, right? We have to tame the ego, bridle the ego, to get it to go in the right direction because we don't want to be working backwards. And a lot of the time, it seems like from that ego level, we have an idea of what we want, where we're supposed to go, how it's supposed to happen. But of course, spirit always has a higher path for us and has a long range view of the situation that we don't have. And so we also have to kind of surrender that ego and that hot headedness, that impulsivity, and trust where we are being called. When we do this, when we can harmonize the spiritual purpose with our new sense of ego, our new sense of self that we are stepping into at this time, that's when we can really trailblaze forward and move into alignment with our soul purpose and mission. So that's a theme that's going to be carrying throughout this entire year. We're definitely feeling a peak in that energy now because we're going to have a Saturn-Neptune conjunction at the time that we have this eclipse, and that's going to, carry forward for several weeks. And then we will have this energy re-arise. It's going to rise up again in like a climactic sort of fashion later in the year. And this is going to happen, let's see, around October time, because we're going to have Neptune. Let me see. I'm kind of vamping until I find my place. This is crazy. Look at all this writing, you guys. Yeah. So, what did I write here? Yeah, when we marry action with soul purpose, we open the gates to freedom, movement, and swift change. That's the other thing, with the snake energy, we've been just wanting this like actual change in action and to step into like more of the fun energy. But we've been like really disciplined and held down in these like periods of shedding and inner work. Well, now we really have an opportunity to make fast changes and to make leaps and bounds in our evolution, but it all depends on how we can marry the ego with soul purpose. So it reaches its peak in September because we are going to have an Aries full moon that is conjunct with Neptune while Neptune is in its retrograde cycle at its solar opposition. That is going to be such an intense alignment, folks. So just know that this energy of purpose and freedom and that passion that we feel as we move in the right direction, as we feel that call into our destiny, that's going to reach a climax in September. Okay, let's move on. Let's move it along here. So, horses are also associated because they are often thought of as spiritual messengers. And so they are associated with higher levels of consciousness and enlightenment. They have this theme of breaking barriers, right? They can help us break through barriers. There's that freedom theme again. But this is specific to our consciousness and our perception and the way that we are able to conceive of reality so that we can move beyond any kind of potential barriers that we perceive are holding us back. This theme very much aligns with Uranus moving into Gemini and officially being in Gemini from now on, for the next 6 years or so. So Uranus is going to do that at the end of April. And I've been talking about this a lot. I literally recorded a podcast all about Uranus and Gemini, and I called it Breaking Barriers of Consciousness, or Breaking Barriers to Consciousness. So this transit of Uranus and Gemini is going to introduce groundbreaking perceptions. It is going to change the way that we view reality itself. It's going to call us to go back over everything we learned and thought that we knew was real and true. Elementary ideas that were introduced when we were very young that we've come to just accept. We're going to be going back to basics and really rewriting the entire story. The story of reality, the story of our lives, the story of what's possible to create. And thus, we are getting, so Uranus is like the higher mind, right? I've heard Pam Gregory describe it as the mind of God, and I love that. It is the higher octave of Mercury. So it's like we receive divine inspiration, divine ideas, enlightenment through the higher mind. And this allows us to ground that higher perception into the energy of Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury, the conscious mind, and we can thus change our perception. And I think we're going to get all kinds of interesting changes in our perception, including the way that our perception, like I'm talking on a whole new level, previous to, what am I saying? A whole different level than what we previously had considered. How much our perception actually influences the manifestation of reality itself. And this is working on an individual level, agreed, and then also on a collective level, agreed upon reality. I am literally speaking. I don't know if you guys caught that. That was like me saying the end of the sentence before the other part of the sentence. What is happening right now? This is Uranus energy. So the horse, right? We're talking about horse themes. The horse is bringing us this shift, this breaking through barriers. And I think that it really does pertain to Uranus because Uranus is all about deconditioning and breaking through whatever constrictions that Saturn has established through its order and its rules and its hierarchy. Uranus is very much concerned with freedom. And again, we are talking about Aquarius energy because this fire horse year is stamped with that ring of fire eclipse happening in the sign of Aquarius. Uranus rules Aquarius. So absolutely the work that Uranus does this year is going to be funneled into the overarching theme of energy for the entire year. And again, there's a very strong theme of freedom, but also truth. And Uranus is really going to be working hard in the sign of Gemini to deliver truth. And we will be challenged as we move through this year to stand in our truth. This is going to be one of those themes that comes up again and again. And it's super interesting when we look at the axis of Leo and Aquarius because there is an important component of truth within this axis. Aquarius is absolutely concerned with truth, like unequivocally concerned with truth, and must be in alignment with truth. And in order to be authentic and to live its free existence, right? It has to be free to be authentic. Leo wants all of that. Leo wants to be free. It wants to live its truth. But Leo is a little bit more subject to the opinions of other people. And just as an astrologer, and I'm not saying this applies to everybody, but as an astrologer, I have noticed that there are people that have strong Leo placements that tend to be kind of liars. I've noticed this. it is a theme with people with strong Leo energy. And again, I'm not saying that applies to everyone that has Leo placements. And in fact, it can often be the opposite. Okay. But I think this is the difference between the lower and the higher octaves of Leo. Because Leo cares so much about approval and being loved, right? It relates to that inner child within us and the heart, the Christ energy. So there is this strong desire for peace, harmony, love, acceptance, and approval that sometimes Leo alters its expression in order to gain approval from other people. And this is where the liar energy comes in, because Leo will no longer be acting in alignment with its authenticity when it does that. And that's why it's balanced by the Aquarius energy, because Aquarius is super detached. It doesn't care what other people think about it. It's just concerned with truth. Now, there are, negatives that go into that, of course. Aquarius can be very cold and very, not really focused on the individual, kind of focused more on the greater good. So sometimes the individual gets sacrificed for the greater good. All those things go into that archetype. But so they need each other to balance. Okay. So I really want to make it clear, I'm not picking on Leos. My point is that I think it's a special challenge for the Leo archetype. Okay. It is one of the challenges in those who are holding this energy very strong. Okay. Leo is challenged to live its truth and to step into that higher octave of integrity and authenticity. And it is a challenge because Leo is so heart-centered and cares so much what other people think about it. So this year, especially if you have Leo placements in your chart, you are really going to be challenged. And again, spiritual initiation, ring of fire, you're going to be challenged to really stand strong in your truth and who you are. And when I say challenged, I mean you will be challenged. Like you're going to come up against battles or resistance or judgment. There's going to be challenges that come up in your life that test you. There's that Saturn and Aries, right? Because we're being pulled into this spiritual purpose. And part of that purpose is our authenticity. Like you have to align with your spiritual purpose. You have to be in alignment with your soul's mission, right? If you want to live out that mission and also feel fulfilled and happy and, live a good life. So each of us is going to feel called into that expression, into that soul purpose. And then Saturn's going to present us with limits, barriers, tests, challenges, disapproval, and judgment from other people. So then if you have really strong Leo placements, and honestly, even if you don't have strong Leo placements, this is still probably going to come up for you at some point. But you will be challenged to really stand in your truth. And you will be challenged to balance between these two sister signs, Aquarius and Leo, right? Aquarius can detach. So there's that detachment that's needed in order to stand strong in your truth, but you also have to be centered in your heart, right? So it is both, and it will be challenged. Now, part of the challenge also comes from the fact that Jupiter will be changing into the sign of Leo at the end of June. So it will be in that sign for a year. And once again, Jupiter's transit is bringing us this theme of marrying the conscious and the unconscious, because it's been working through Cancer for the past year, or, at this point, it's like the past 6 months, 9 months, whatever. It has been working on us at the deepest levels. It's been pulling things up from that deep seat of the soul, which is represented by Cancer. The imprinting, the energetic psychic imprinting that we have, where we are sorting through what's ours, what was just imprinted on us, what is ancestral, what stuff that we're carrying in from past lives, what do I need to keep, what needs to go, and what sort of like hidden gifts and talents lie deep within these waters that I have not uncovered and come to realize yet or put into practice. So Jupiter has been doing all of this work, right? Well, then when it gets to the end of June, it's going to shift into the sign of Leo. Leo is ruled by the sun, and Cancer is ruled by the moon. The moon is our unconscious self. The sun is our conscious self. So we see these themes being bridged together. And this is really interesting because Again, we have this fire horse energy. This is spiritual initiation. That ring of fire that I'm talking about with the annular eclipse also holds this same kind of thematic energy. Because a ring of fire is when the moon moves in front of the sun, but it is farther away from Earth in its orbit, the moon is. And so it is not close enough to Earth to totally black out the sun like it would during a total solar eclipse. So because it's a little bit farther away, what happens is we get this ring of fire that kind of like bleeds over the moon from our perspective on Earth. And symbolically, what this indicates is that we have the unconscious, which is the moon, moving in front of consciousness, but it is not eclipsed, but it is surrounded by our consciousness, which is the sun. I hope this is making sense. Hence the ring of fires. Hence we have the conscious and the unconscious being married together. All right. And there's also that energy of divine union. The moon is feminine and the sun is masculine. So we have the marriage of masculine and feminine rising up within us. And yes, that can come through partnerships, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But this energy is really about taking the unconscious and making it conscious. So Jupiter, which is our expander, our magnifier, and our bringer of opportunities, it has been working through Cancer. It's going to shift into Leo next, right? So what was previously unconscious and newly discovered in the sign of Cancer via the moon, because it's ruled by the moon, it will then move into the sign of Leo, which then takes all of that energy and that information and it brings it into consciousness. Leo is ruled by the sun. So Jupiter is then going to expand that aspect of reality for us. So, and it's going to bridge these energies together. So, sorry, I don't mean to hammer on about this. I hope it's all making sense to you. But the point is that there is this theme of bringing the conscious into alignment with consciousness. And the sun is also our vitality and our desire and what lights us up, what gives us a sense of fulfillment. So we have, again, this theme of aligning ourselves with our purpose and our truth. And again, our fire, our passion, what drives us, what inspires us. And these are all horsey themes as well. Okay. Let's keep moving on. So, another prominent theme going on this year. Okay, this is really interesting. So, horses also are deeply associated with healing. Horses are actually used as a type of therapy called equine therapy. It is thought that horses have very profound emotional intelligence, and they are often used as mirrors to humans that kind of help people heal. There's this long running, like deeply profound, that's repetitive. There's this really, really long running sacred symbiotic relationship between horses and people. It goes back hundreds, thousands, maybe more. It goes back far, you guys, okay? Since the dawn of time, horses and humans have been working in symbiotic relationships, right? And horses really are allies to humans, and they have been for a long time, and there's deep spiritual significance to this. So, through this year of the fire horse, we are also getting very strong healing energy. Okay, now this is going to be a little bit different than what we experienced with the wood snake type of healing. And this healing is going to come through in a myriad of ways. One of the astrological alignments that's coming through this year that is supporting this energy is we have Chiron, our wounded healer, is actually going to ingress into the sign of Taurus for the first time this year. Now, it's not going to stay there, it will retrograde back into the sign of Aries before it's officially in Taurus. But Chiron has a really weird orbital cycle. It's very elliptical. And so sometimes it spends like kind of a short amount of time in certain signs, and sometimes it's in signs for a really long time. It's been in the sign of Aries for years. So having it shift into Taurus is going to be a big deal. We're going to very strongly feel that energy. And this is extra significant because the myth of Chiron is already in and of itself associated with horses. Uh, it's so I love it. I love it, you guys. I just love this energy, and I just love these themes. Um, so, yes, Chiron was a centaur in Greek mythology. He was a trainer of heroes. He was a shaman, a medicine man. He was super wise. He was different from the other centaurs because I think he was a demigod. So he was like half mortal, half god. And I think he was trained by Apollo. Don't quote me on this. I have to check my Greek mythology. But the point of it is that Chiron was set apart from the other centaurs. It's like the other centaurs were too strongly rooted in their animal nature, and so they were almost like barbaric, and they were very destructive. They were kind of like these animalistic forces of destruction. Chiron was very balanced between his animal and his human nature because he had that kind of godliness, godlikeness about him, and because he was trained by the gods and gifted this beautiful wisdom. He was incredibly wise. So, trainer of heroes, right? He trained, well, whatever. He trained all the main heroes that you know from Greek mythology, like Hercules and, um, what is that dude's name that like got shot in the leg? Okay, I cannot. I cannot right now. I'm not going to get stuck on details right now. My brain just doesn't want to go there. So anyway, the point of this is that Chiron at one point created a special poison arrow for one of his students, which he then accidentally was wounded by. Okay. And there's different versions of how that happens, but I'm giving you the gist, the important pieces of the story. Chiron devised a special poison arrow, which he then was wounded by. And because he was immortal, because he's like a demigod, he was immortal. That means that the poison couldn't kill him, but it was poison. So he was basically perpetually wounded. He could not heal, but he also couldn't die. And so, thus, he lived out the rest of his life in incredible pain. And it wasn't until he decided to sacrifice himself to save Prometheus, because Prometheus was in a bind with Zeus, that then Zeus was like, wow, that was good job. I'm going to actually take you and free you from your pain, and I'm going to place you among the stars. And that's essentially the story of Chiron. But the reason why this is relevant to horses is it has a lot to do with healing, and it has this like energy of balancing between the human and the animal, right? And again, horses, there is this long-standing symbiotic relationship with humans where horses are allies for humans and vice versa. And of course, I know there's also horrible things that have happened. And if you've ever watched Game of Thrones, you know that there are horrible things that happen between humans and horses. And I don't know what is up with that. Did the people that make Game of Thrones hate horses? Have you ever wondered this? I've wondered that. But anyway, I digress. In general, horses have been allies to humans, and they have offered healing to humans because they mirror our emotions to us, and they help us get in contact with deep parts of ourselves that need healing. And they have this very soothing, loving, calming kind of energy. So, having Chiron move between Aries and Taurus, and again, we are starting a new cycle via Saturn and Neptune in Aries, where we are focusing on Aries. We are getting to know ourselves again, getting to know our spiritual mission, right? We are heeding the call to adventure. Chiron's been doing all of this work in Aries for years already, kind of helping us to heal that ego self and that identity wound that so many of us carry on a deep level. And now it is bridging into the sign of Taurus. So we're bridging between Aries and Taurus. So we're taking the identity and we're grounding it in our values and into tangible reality. And so these themes will arise through this year. And this is extra emphasized because we will have a Venus retrograde this year. Venus rules Taurus, and she also rules Libra, which is opposite of Aries. So there's also this theme about wealth and generosity and like nobility and status that's associated with horses as well. And I think that's going to tie into this Chiron stuff because it's starting to link into that sign of Taurus. And because Taurus is about our values, but then on a physical level, those values become manifested through actual money and resources and what we need to sustain ourselves in the 3D world. So we're also going to be having themes around money come up, but the money stuff, and when I say money, I mean like abundance, resources, again, what you need to survive. It can be like a broader kind of topic. But this theme of wealth and abundance is actually rooted in personal values and how you value yourself. And so again, horses healing, Chiron healing, we have wounds around our values and our personal value and our personal self-worth, what we feel we are worth. These themes are also going to arise this year to be confronted. And again, this is part of that spiritual initiation because, again, we are challenged to step into our truth. And part of our truth is tied into our self worth. We cannot attract what we need to survive if we don't believe, even on like an unconscious level, that we deserve to have those things. So these themes are coming up this year to be dealt with. And again, that's part of that spiritual initiation. You will be challenged, you will be tested, you will have to fight your battles this year. But part of that challenge is to stand strong in your truth, to know your worth, and to trust that you are where you are meant to be and that you are doing exactly what you are meant to be doing. These are all themes coming through all those placements that I just talked about. All right, let's keep moving on. So, going along with the theme of emotional intelligence with horses, I mentioned in my 2026 video that Mercury will be retrograde only in water signs this year. That just screams emotional intelligence, does it not? You're literally linking together the emotional and the psychic along with the mental, perceptual faculties. So Jupiter just did all this work in Cancer. Mercury's now going to go back over things. It will be retrograde in Cancer over the summer. It starts its first retrograde cycle, I think, at the very end of February, going through March, and that's going to be in Pisces. And then it will end the year with a retrograde cycle simultaneous to Venus's retrograde cycle in the sign of Scorpio. So we are starting with like the spiritual psyche. We're moving into the emotional, nurturing, ancestral psyche, and then we are concluding with the soul essence and with personal empowerment. Okay. And these are the emotional themes, the psychic, the water element themes that are coming up for us to go back over and integrate into consciousness via Mercury this year. So, again, this is a theme associated with the fire horse because this is a spiritual initiation, and horses offer healing, right? They offer us the ability to heal things that we previously weren't able to heal. Now, again, horses are also associated with mirroring, right? Mirroring human emotions. And we see some strong themes coming up this year related to relationships, and relationships are our greatest mirrors. So while this is a 1 year, and this is very much about the personal hero's journey and spiritual initiation on an individual level, getting into alignment with your purpose and your unique individual path, I will note that as we go into 2027, and we have the Lunar New Year on February 6th, which also coincides with an annular solar eclipse in Aquarius. Yes, we get another one going into 2027. That will be the start of the fire goat. Okay? Not the fire horse, the fire goat will be 2027. I know this is getting ahead of ourselves, but I want to say that 2027 is going to be a 2 universal year. And in Chinese astrology, goats are associated with love, compassion, sociability, and relationships. Okay. And in a 2 year, 2 is related to relationships. It's related to alignment and harmony and balance, but also love and connection and partnership. So we are definitely going to be seeing these themes arise from September onward. So yeah, there's a lot of focus on the individual self, especially through the first, 8 to 9 months of the year. And of course, it depends on your individual chart exactly how this shows up, and it might be a little different for everybody. I'm just speaking in general terms. As collective energies, though, there is this like one energy of initiation and leadership going into the fire horse energy. But when we get to September, we're going to start to feel the energies of 2027 bleed through into 2026. And part of the reason why there is this focus on the individual self is because you have to go inward to the self if you are going to marry the self with another, so to speak, symbolically speaking. So if you were going to partner with other people, if you were going to work with other people, it doesn't just have to be romantic stuff, although it definitely is romantic stuff as well. You have to work on the self first, right? You have to work on the root system, the foundation. You have to align your energy and get into coherence with yourself first before you are able to compatibly and harmoniously partner and work with other people. And that is part of what's coming through the end of 2026. So we do all this spiritual initiation and working on the self, and then we begin to bridge that energy into this theme of partnership, preparing us as we move into the year of the fire goat. So, to that end, we have an interesting dynamic going on with Venus retrograde at the end of this year. And we also have this little dance of Mars and Pluto going on. So it actually starts this month on January 27th. We have a Mars Pluto conjunction in Aquarius. And then by the end of this year, where did I write that down? Bam, bam, bam. So many paragraphs, you guys. Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah. So I don't think I wrote it down. I wrote other things down that I don't need to have. It is happening. Oh, it's on October 3rd. I love how I just had that in my memory. So yeah, it actually happens right after Venus turns retrograde. That's why it's significant, because these events are interconnected. This is really interesting. I had kind of like a Sherlock Holmes moment when I was researching the astrological alignments that are connected to, the Pluto and Mars dance, as well as the Venus retrograde and stuff. So in 2025, in the month of April, we actually had a Libra full moon, and this happened right after Venus turned direct, after her retrograde in Aries. Okay. Now, this is significant because Venus rules the sign of Libra. So follow with me, would you? We had a Libra full moon in April at 23 degrees of Libra. 2 weeks later, we had a new supermoon in Taurus, also ruled by Venus, the same day that we had a Mars and Pluto opposition between Aquarius and Leo. So Mars was in Leo, Pluto was in Aquarius. And this was right as Pluto was stationing to turn retrograde. So there was a lot of energy that went into those events, and we had very strong relationship themes. We also had really strong themes tied into divine feminine and divine masculine energetics. Okay. So something was introduced at that time. Okay. Something was birthed, something was revealed, and it had to do with the principles of Venus and the principles of Mars. Now, mind you, I'm an evolutionary astrologer, and in evolutionary astrology, Pluto represents our soul's desires, which are sort of like unconscious within us, right? Because the soul is sort of unconscious. But Mars in evolutionary astrology represents the conscious. It's sort of like the conscious ambassador for Pluto, because Mars is a conscious planet. It's like how we take action on what the soul unconsciously wants. So when we have Mars and Pluto aspects in astrology, it's extra important because these two planets are both working on behalf of the soul's evolution directly. As well, Mars is the masculine, right? It is the masculine energy, and Venus is the feminine energy. Mars is that outwardly propelling kind of force, and Venus is that magnetically attracting kind of force. So there is something going on here. We had something introduced post Venus retrograde 2025, full moon in Libra at 23 degrees, followed by the Taurus supermoon, new supermoon, that happened at the same time that we had a Mars and Pluto opposition. So fast forward to 2026, we have a Mars-Pluto conjunction going on a week from today. And then at the end of the year, in October, Venus is going to go retrograde again on October 2nd. She's going to start her retrograde in Pluto's sign of Scorpio at 8 degrees of Scorpio. If you're into numerology, you're like, ooh, did you say 8 degrees? She's going to start at 8 degrees of Scorpio. And then when she reaches her solar conjunction, okay, that's the height, the climax of her retrograde period, she'll be squaring Pluto in Pluto's sign of Scorpio. Venus will be in Scorpio. At the same time, Chiron will reach its solar opposition, aka climax of its retrograde cycle. So Chiron, our healer, right? Our wounded healer, doing all that work between Taurus and Aries. Taurus is Venus's sign. Okay. Venus will then turn direct after backtracking all the way to the sign of Libra, to 22 degrees of Libra. Okay. When was that full moon? Full moon, April 2025, 23 degrees of Libra. So Venus is backtracking all the way to that degree, okay? To that degree that we had that full moon, which was happening in succession with this Pluto-Mars opposition. Now, mind you, that the day after Venus turns retrograde, we have another Pluto-Mars opposition at the same degree that we had the first one. I hope I am not losing you. I feel a little bit like Doc Brown right now, you guys. Marty! The flux capacitor. So we had Pluto opposite of Mars at the end of April 2025, okay? Same time that we had a Taurus new moon ruled by Venus, right? Okay? That happened at 4 degrees of Aquarius and Leo, okay? At least Sabian symbol wise. So that was the Sabian symbol that was activated at that time, okay? Fast forward more than a year later, October 2026, first Venus goes retrograde in Pluto's sign. Then Pluto and Mars have another opposition at the same exact degree that they had the first opposition. So it's coming full circle, okay? And then Chiron reaches the climax of its retrograde period. Venus squares Pluto. Venus reaches the climax of her retrograde period. And then finally, she's going to turn direct. What day is that? I totally forgot. I didn't write it down. It's fine, guys. Let's not lose momentum. But then she's going to turn direct. I think it's November 13th. Oh my God, how do I remember these things? She's going to turn direct November 13th. Yes, because then that's important too. She's going to turn direct November 13th at 22 degrees of Libra. So we're coming full circle to that full moon in Libra from 2025, as well as the Pluto-Mars opposition that happened at the same time. And then there was the Taurus new moon, which is also a Venusian theme. She's coming full circle, and she's going to retrograde back over those points. So here's, and Mercury's turning direct the same day in Scorpio that Venus turns direct in Libra. And Venus is turning direct on November 13th. This is within the 11/11 portal window on the day of the Divine Feminine, the 13th. So, you just can't make this stuff up. My brain, you guys, just goes a million miles a minute. So, there are implications. Let's talk about what all this means. You guys are like, okay, Christina, you're really excited, but what are you saying? Slow down. Doc, slow down. I don't understand what you're saying. So, okay. I'm just laughing at myself. Okay. There was something introduced in April of 2025. It is coming full circle in October of 2026. This is tied into divine feminine and divine masculine dynamics. It is tied into transforming the ego desires versus like the soul desires. So there's that spiritual initiation again, initiating the ego into spiritual alignment. This ties into relationship dynamics. This ties into self-worth dynamics. Okay. And we come to our final horsey theme that I wanted to discuss. Do you know what this theme is going to be? Let me tell you. Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Okay, we're going to talk about sex. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Don't get uncomfortable. It's okay. Calm down. It's okay. The reason why I realized that the theme of sex was going to come up, and mind you, it's not really about sex. Sex is actually like a symbol for something deeper, of course. But horses are associated with sex. Okay, that is another theme that is horse related. Okay, this kind of like sensual, passionate, physical, sexual desire. When I started contemplating the themes of the fire horse, honest to God, the first thing that popped into my head was the author D.H. Lawrence. He's actually an English author, was very popular around the time of the Industrial Revolution. Okay, and D.H. Lawrence was sort of famous because he used horses a lot in his stories. He wrote a lot about horses. I think he even had a story called The Horse Dealer's Daughter that I had to read in college. And so in the work of D.H. Lawrence, horses are symbols. They are symbols for sexual desire and the power or repression that comes from those symbols, right? Because horses can be they can be presented as very powerful, raw, kind of like this vitality, this energy force that comes through like this sexual desire. It's like the life force energy. But he also wrote about horses being like put into submission and abused and the power struggles that kind of come along. And that was also a sexual theme, or it was a symbol for a sexual theme. I just want to be very clear. T.H. Lawrence was not writing about like horse sex or, God forbid, like bestiality or anything like that. No, 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 no. Not like that. This was all on the metaphorical, symbolic level. Okay. Okay. But horses were often used in his work as a theme for either sexual repression or sexual power. And so, again, I have to point it out because it's there, guys. This is going to be a theme that comes up this year through the fire horse, all right? And especially as we get to the end of the year, we reach that Venus retrograde period, we start to feel the energies of the fire goat bleed into the energies of the fire horse, okay? So, fire as a sign, as an element, not as a sign, as an element, it is also related to sex and passion and that fire energy. When we connect it to spirit, we're talking about Kundalini activation, okay? And as many of us know, Kundalini is that sexual force, it is that creative force. Now, it's a lot of other things too, and Kundalini can also bring up some really not so fun things, but that is one of the things that Kundalini is known for, right? So we have the energy that is centered in the lower chakras, right? That begins to rise and eventually marries together with the higher chakras, right? So then we also have the Hieros Gamos, and we have the union of masculine and feminine. Here we go with that Venus and Mars theme coming through again. So Venus's retrograde period starts in the sign of Scorpio, okay? And Scorpio is ruled by Pluto, and she's at 8 degrees of Scorpio. And Scorpio is associated with the 8th house. 8 has to do with power. Scorpio has to do with power. Pluto has to do with power. So, and Venus is like the way we love and want to be loved, but it's also our self-worth and it's our relationship dynamics. So this Venus retrograde is going to start. I'm sorry if I'm going too fast. Slow down, slow down. This Venus retrograde is going to start in the energy of that deep Plutonian sexual kind of thematic energy, okay? In the sign of Scorpio, we deal with the darkest of the dark, okay? Scorpio goes to the darkest places because it wants to transform those things to shift into the highest octave so that all that those dark elemental themes associated with the scorpion can be reformed, transformed, transmuted, transcended, and brought into rebirth as the phoenix. Okay, so it can be spiritualized, right? Brought into the higher octave. So Venus is going to start out in Scorpio. We are going to begin to go back over our relationships to other people and our relationships to ourselves, and exploring these dynamics. What does sex mean to each of us? How has our relationship with sex been formed, and how has it been expressed throughout our lives? And what is what is our relationship to sex? Is it healthy? Does it empower us? Does it feel disempowering? If you are in relationships that have unhealthy power dynamics, these things are going to arise. And mind you, it doesn't just have to be about sex, but I'm just saying, the horse energy, the D.H. Lawrence of it all, this is going to be a theme that comes up this year, especially because we have that Pluto-Mars opposition happening pretty much at the same time that Venus goes retrograde, and then later Venus squares Pluto, okay? So absolutely these themes around sex. Now, this is important, and I'm not going to really go into detail about this at this time. Maybe I'll do a video on it sometime. We'll see if I have the gall to do it. But I do want to say that collectively, and Pluto is a collective planet, collectively, we have a very unhealthy perception. There's that Uranus and Gemini thing around sex, right? Sex is one of those aspects of human nature and of reality that has been the most distorted, okay? And this is really important because that is the creation, right? That is the life force energy. And again, sex is the physical manifestation of the internal divine marriage, right? It is a symbol for the union of divine masculine and divine feminine. So it's no wonder that this is coming up as a theme during this time, because in the year that we are undergoing spiritual initiation, each of us is being compelled into inner union with ourselves. There's that one energy, right? The one. You are being compelled, initiated. So, and by the way, I forgot to mention that horses, as a symbol, are also associated with psychopomps. Do you know what a psychopomp is? It is basically a spirit guide, but one that comes to you often in animal form. And so usually they were psychopomps for shamans. And that's why we often see shamans kind of dancing around with little horse sticks and stuff. It's because horses represented this guide that would take shamans into the underworld, and they would be spiritual allies for the shaman to kind of help them guide through those dark, mysterious realms and encounter the shadow. And again, shamans did that to heal at the deepest level. So here we have the healing theme coming in again. So again, the horse, the psychopomp, leading us deep into the shadow, Scorpio, Pluto, to kind of encounter where have the power dynamics become imbalanced? Venus, Libra, balance. Where have things become imbalanced, and where do we need to balance these dynamics? This is happening on the individual level, but it is a reflection of what's going on in the collective. We have an imbalance going on between divine feminine and divine masculine. Now, this is each of those energies juxtaposed against each other, but it's also within each individual energy, right? Divine feminine is not in her highest octave. Divine masculine is not in his highest octave either. So, and it has to do with each individual balancing masculine and feminine within the self. And then, of course, that becomes reflected through relationships as well. I hope this is all making sense. So, through the Fire Horse year, we are going to be initiated to do deep shadow work via Venus. And this ties into our self-worth, right? One of the themes, if you have Pluto in Libra, you are familiar with this theme. One of the themes of this Pluto Libra energy signature is codependence in relationships and abuse of power in relationships, because Venus in Libra really wants harmony and really wants balance, but oftentimes will defer personal power, or will what's the word I'm looking for? Will deny the self and the individual needs for the sake of others, right? To maintain harmony, to not, rock the boat. And thus, Pluto and Libra folks often attract abusive dynamics in relationships in order to enforce the lesson, okay, of having balance in relationships. So it goes both ways, right? You have to have personal power and you have to stand in your power, but you also need to respect the power of others and to find balance. Libra is about like the scales coming into balance. So Venus, as ruler of Libra, she starts her retrograde cycle in Scorpio, where we dive deep into the unknown, into the mystery, and into the darkness. And we are led by the horse, our psychopomp, right? We are led into the shadows where we need to heal things. Now, some of these things could be current relationship dynamics. They could be dynamics within the self. They could be stuff from past lives. They could be ancestral patterns, right? Horses are also associated with ancestors and like tribal dynamics, right? For the collective. So there's a lot that goes into this work. And I know this is really deep, maybe heavy stuff, but this is part of what we are doing because, again, the year of the fire goat is going to be largely concerned with relationships and cultivating harmony. But in order to do that at the highest spiritual levels, we cannot be operating from a base of self denial, right? Because that's actually imbalanced. Even though you might be creating external harmonics, you would internally be imbalanced. And so we have to first be initiated into the lessons of Venus and Taurus, which is about self worth and cultivating personal power and self sustainability in a way that is fair and balanced. So Venus moves through this retrograde cycle, and then she concludes at 22 degrees of Libra, which is taking us all the way back to that full moon from April 2025. So we are definitely backtracking and going over. So you might want to consider, you're like, how do I apply this? Christina, that's great. How do I apply this to my actual life? You might want to consider when it comes to themes of self-worth and relationship dynamics and power dynamics. What has unfolded for you between April 2025 and now? Because by October of this year, these things are going to come full circle. There is something that is going to be integrated for us through Venus's retrograde cycle and through that second Pluto-Mars opposition. And it definitely relates to self-worth, and it definitely relates to the harmonization of divine masculine and divine feminine. And it is bringing us into our soul's evolutionary purpose as well, into better alignment with that. Okay. Oh my gosh. I managed to get through that. But yeah. So these were our horsey themes. These were our themes. So I hope that this video, as unhinged as it was at moments, I hope that it brought you some insight into the themes of the fire horse. Again, independence and initiation and freedom seeking. And mind you, all the work that we do this year, the challenges that we face, the shadow work that comes up, the battles we have to fight, the leadership that we are compelled to step into, as hard as that can be for each of us in our own individual way. Ultimately, at the end of the day, this is bringing us into alignment with greater freedom and authenticity. And that is really what this year is about. I forgot to mention that the nodes are shifting signs as well. That's kind of part of the fact that we are having eclipses now in Aquarius and Leo. The nodes are going to shift, I think at the end of the end of July, the nodes are going to shift. So that is also highlighting this theme of truth, right? Truth, authenticity, individuality. And we also have Black Moon Lilith transiting through the sign of Sagittarius for most of this year. And Sagittarius is also very concerned with truth. It is another fire sign. All the fire signs hold themes around truth, and each of them in their shadow aspect tend to deviate the opposite way, right? Leos can be liars. Sagittariuses can be, what is that word? Oh my God, what am I trying to say? They they tell tall tales. They exaggerate details to the point where they're not really being honest anymore. It's that Jupiter energy. They exaggerate. So each of these signs hold an element, a theme surrounding truth. And so truth is going to be a strong theme this year. Each of us is going to be challenged to stand strongly in our truth. And again, whatever you face this year, and mind you, there's going to be a lot of change happening as well because horses represent change and adaptability. So all of these like transits and alignments, the eclipses, it's all going to be bringing huge change and transformation. And we are likely to see those changes actually manifest on a physical level, whether that's your personal health and your relationships. Maybe you're going to be moving, maybe you're going to be changing jobs. There's going to be all kinds of changes and shuffling and shifting around this year, okay? Especially in the earlier parts of the year. But again, mind you, whatever unfolds under the umbrella of the fire horse and the one universal energy, at the end of the day, it is helping you align with greater freedom and authenticity. And that, my friends, is a beautiful thing. It is a beautiful thing. Okay, we did it. We made it. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you all. I hope that this all made sense. If you have any questions, by all means, leave me a comment. I will get back to you and do my best to answer your questions. But I just want to say thank you so much for supporting my work. Thank you for being here. Once again, please like, subscribe, notification bell, share this video, do whatever you can. I love you all and I appreciate you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you from my heart to yours. I will catch you in the next video. Bye.